Alright, it's June 1st, 2016. Time for an update on the aquaponics system. So far I've added some strings to the tomatoes. They're actually being looped down. I'm starting to work them down. And I'm getting a lot of clusters. Every like 6 inches or so, plus or minus 3 inches, you get a cluster of tomatoes on the vines. So I got quite a few tomatoes coming in. I'm actually getting my first red one. Today's about, I think, June 3rd today. And like the plants are growing probably 6 inches every couple of days or so. And that's pretty good considering that we've only had maybe a week and a half worth of sun in the last month. All this crazy rain we've been having. And I've noticed now that it's getting warm outside, my actual leaves on my tomato plants are starting to get darker. So they're getting heavier and darker. That's good. They're starting to get I thought it was a nutrition deficiency, but it was just because the water wasn't hot, I guess. We'll see. Or it might have been because of that, because I have bumped up the feed. I also made another upgrade here with auto fish feeders. So I can load this reservoir up and I can leave at the current date, like how much I'm feeding them right now, 3 times a day. I can leave probably a couple of weeks and not worry about them running out of food. This thing right here, you program it, you can feed them 1 to 4 times a day, and each of those 1 to 4 times a day, you can feed them 1 or 2 times. So you can, if you set it for 2 times, it'll throw it once, and then exactly 1 minute later, it'll throw another dose of food in there. That's what's going on with that. I just threw this over it because these are made for indoor and they get hot out here in the sun in the heat of the greenhouse. So it's keeping that sun off, and it's also, if any water leaks through the roof of this leaky greenhouse, then it'll be just fine. There's my other one. Actually, they're built to be mounted to fish tanks too. So I didn't have that, obviously, and it wasn't going to work with the shape of this edge of the barrel. So I clipped off some of the edge to make a flat surface and then bolted this wood to it. And then it had another type of bracket that you could screw onto stuff. So I used it to screw onto the wood. Over here in my, actually I'll go ahead and say the thyme is still blooming, like strong, except for the thyme that's kind of shaded out. This greenhouse still smells like thyme. Over here in the wicking bed, my bell peppers are starting to get bigger. I've only probably watered them like twice this whole time. Oh man, there's volunteer tomato plants that escaped me. Every once in a while I miss them. That's like my #1 weed in this wicking bed, is because the compost I oftentimes had tomato plants in them from the kitchen. I'll probably rip out that tomato plant. And then carrots are starting to come in pretty good. Been eating on those things. Those things taste really good. And then over here, as you can see, I let all those little lettuce heads I had cut off a long time ago. I never did pull off the bases. So each base set off like several heads, micro heads, that are now blooming. And I went ahead and let that happen over here because there's just nothing going on in this bed anyways. I neglected to plant it out in hopes that by the end of the summer these strawberries will spread and fill up the bed. I do have some cucumbers that I'd started in here and here that are starting to take off, and then the chives and garlic chives in the back that you probably can't even see. So hopefully we'll get some more strawberries taking over that. And I want to take some of these strawberries if I get them, and hopefully by the end of the summer I can have some of those towers in here. And then this bed right here, this is the one I actually did plant out pretty well. Still pretty good. Like every single sage start that I put in here, I just took cuttings and stuck them in the gravel. Every single one of those is growing in here in the understory. Growing slower, obviously. Lemon balm's doing good. My oregano is doing so good that it's actually flowering out right now. Which my oregano in the yard is not doing that yet. And then my kale is doing great, but now it's getting overran with caterpillars. The cabbage looper is really bad in this area, and every time I try to grow anything in the brassica family, they'll annihilate. Like look at this thing. See all the leaves on this? And every day I come out here and I grab like 10 or 15 caterpillars off of this. So I probably pulled at least 100 caterpillars off of this thing so far. Yeah, just feed them to the goldfish so I don't feel so bad. Oh, you guys gonna come up and eat it? I must have scared them when I walked up. Grab some more. Oh, they got it now. You guys are camera shy. These guys will like tear up these caterpillars. They'll pull them under and just rip them apart until they can't eat them. Obviously, most of these caterpillars are a little bit big for those little goldfish. Anyways, you can see all the poop from the caterpillars. So that's like free fertilizer, I guess you could look at it that way. I did do a bunch of starts down here, like this basil and some lettuce, but it's been so cloudy. But this is already a shady, protected area, so it's obviously not doing that well. I did actually rip up that peach tree start that was living and stuck it down here. I stuck some rotten wool cube into this cool area down here, and it's no longer baking up top in that gravel. It's actually throwing out some new leaves now. So I'm gonna actually do all my starts down here. And I can obviously, instead of having the holes spaced out like that, I can have an entire sheet through here. It's got holes like this, and I can do a lot of tree starts. It would be sweet to start a whole orchard every year. Oh, speaking of which, this fig tree that's up here, fig tree's been notorious for being extremely easy to start. This guy's getting pretty big now. He's actually seems to be happy and just fine up here, so obviously I'm probably not going to do my figs down there. That would be a waste of space. Maybe one more sensitive trees. That's the one fig tree I stuck in here. And then I'm 1 for 1. So they're obviously easy to do. I actually added some of these airlift pipes. You can see the PVC pipe that goes here. You come up here, I actually just have a air tube shoved down in there with a bubbler. It brings up the air, which brings up this massive amount of water flow here. I actually have that pump right there is DC powered, so it's running off my solar power, and I just let it go 24/7. It only uses 5 watts, and it's split 2 ways. So let's say that's 2.5 watts worth of water, and it's probably moving like, I don't even know, like maybe 300 or 400 gallons an hour. But you can actually use these things. You'd have to design it differently if you want to lift water higher, but you could actually use them to lift water. The deeper the bottom of the PVC, the higher you can lift water out. So as you can see, 2.5 watts is actually lifting a fair amount of water right now. That's probably around like 200 gallons an hour right there. And you could actually, if you had all your reservoirs, like your fish reservoir and like some constant flood beds. I don't know when the screen's fogging up. So basically, if you had with an airlift system like this, since it's moving quite a bit, you could actually, if you wanted to, you could have a fish tank reservoir, anything up to the size of say a 25-foot above ground pool, and a whole series of beds like this, and you can move some serious water. If I put them all on the same level, and then move from water from one tank to that, and that'll overflow to another one, and another one, and another one, and it'll all come back, and you have it all moved with like 5 watts of power. and then you can have, like, say, another couple of bubblers just circulating water inside that big pool. Like this is actually making a pretty strong current in there. You can see the fish are all. It's not super fast current or anything, but it's there. So, and then also I had upgraded this tank because it kept on. So now I'm feeding the fish a little more than I used to. The solids lift overflow cap was getting clogged up a little bit, and so it was overflowing the top of the barrel. So I added the secondary overflow thing. So if the bottom gets clogged up, the water will overflow and go in here. And actually had to drill a hole in the top of this pipe because it was making a siphon with the way I shaped it, and it was actually lowering the water level even lower. Only to the top of that lower pipe down there, so the air broke the suction. But that's where it's at. Now basically, in order to get this pipe just the right length, I started off with a longer piece, put it in, waited to see where the water level ended up settling at, drew on it with a pin, pulled that top piece of pipe back out, cut it, stuck it back in, and that's why it's so perfectly level with the top of the water. Alright, today I'm going to be working on making my aquaponics system a bit more reliable and lower maintenance. So one of my things that's become a daily routine is to come out here to my ponics pump, and I pick this up and I'll clean the roots off of the intake on this thing. It pretty much either has a large leaf from blowing into the greenhouse, or from the gardening above, or some roots that I've chopped up, or whatever is floating around in the system every day, and I have to come out here and clean this thing off. Seriously disrupts my water flow if I don't do that every day, and I really honestly couldn't leave for more than 2 days without expecting this to just be a constant flood bed due to low water flow. So what I'm going to do is show you how I'm going to fix that. Alright, so here's the aftermath of what I've done for my upgrade. Basically have 2 of these underwater baskets, underwater planting baskets that you normally fill up full of gravel and put stuff like lily pads in for ponds. I got a 5-pack of these for like $2.50. I just drilled some holes and zip tied them together, cut a hole to push the pipe through, and so it's basically Gold Rush Alaska from the Discovery Channel TV show inspired little screen for the pump, and then I pop the face off the pump too. So now I actually haven't had an issue in a long time. It's June now. I've had this basket installed for quite some time, and I have really good water flow still. Here's my first aquaponics tomato. It looks absolutely perfect. Can't wait to try this bad boy out in a few days once it matures. This is something you can take to the store.